The lights dim, the audience holds its breath. And then, tragedy strikes. These are the stories of performers whose final moments unfolded in front of horrified crowds, blending thrill and horror in ways no one could have anticipated. From chilling accidents to heart-stopping twists, this is 1 hour of the most disturbing deaths of performers who died on stage. April 15th, 1984, British comedy unexpectedly lost one of its legends. Tommy Cooper, a well-known Welsh comedian and magician, was performing live at Her Majesty's Theatre in London. At 6'4", wearing his signature red fez hat, Tommy was famous for his blend of magic tricks and humor, often making people laugh with his intentional failures at magic. Something went wrong during a live broadcast of millions of viewers that night. Tommy performed on Live from Her Majesty's, a popular television program. He had done many similar shows over his long career, and the audience eagerly awaited his act. As the show began, Tommy took the stage to perform one of his well-known routines involving a large magic cloak. His assistant helped him put on the cloak, and the show's host, Jimmy Tarbuck, stood behind the curtain, passing Tommy various props to pull out of the cloak. The props got larger and larger, building up to the final gag. Everything seemed like typical Tommy Cooper, chaotic, funny, and unpredictable. Suddenly, Tommy dropped to his knees in the middle of the act. The audience, used to his comedic style, laughed, thinking it was part of the routine. But Tommy didn't get back up. He slumped forward against the stage curtains, and for a moment, even those backstage thought it was another joke. But as the seconds passed, it became clear that something was wrong. Still hidden behind the curtain, Jimmy Tarbuck noticed Tommy's limp body and realized this wasn't part of the act. The show's director quickly decided to cut to an unscheduled commercial break, a sign that things were serious. During the break, the stage crew rushed to help Tommy. His son, who was backstage, confirmed their worst fears. Tommy had a bad back and wouldn't have collapsed on purpose. While the crew tried to revive Tommy, the show's producer, David Bell, faced a tough decision. The show was live with millions watching. Should they cancel the broadcast or continue? After a quick discussion, they decided to continue the show. Les Dennis and Dustin G., the comedy duo scheduled to perform after Tommy, were sent on stage. They acted in the limited space available while Tommy's body remained behind the curtain. The audience, unaware of the situation, continued to laugh, not knowing that the comedian they came to see was in critical condition just a few feet away. After Dennis and G finished their performance, the curtain was carefully removed, and Tommy was taken out of the theater on a stretcher. He was rushed to Westminster Hospital, but it was too late. Tommy Cooper was pronounced dead on arrival. He had suffered a massive heart attack. Although the news wasn't officially reported until the following day, word had already spread. The comedy world was in shock. Tommy Cooper's death marked the end of a career that spanned over 40 years. He had spent his life making people laugh with his unique mix of magic and comedy. His death on stage in the middle of a performance was a reminder of how suddenly life can change. In the following days, there was much debate about continuing the show after Tommy had collapsed. Some thought it was disrespectful to go on while Tommy lay dying backstage. Others believed that it was what Tommy would have wanted. He had dedicated his life to making people laugh, and in a way he did so until the very end. The footage of his final moments has become controversial. Some see it as a tragic end to a beloved comedian's life, while others view it as a fitting, unintended final comedy act. One lingering question is whether immediate medical attention could have saved Tommy's life if the show had been stopped when he collapsed. Was the heart attack so severe that nothing could have been done, or was there a chance he could have survived? Despite his sudden and shocking death, Tommy Cooper's legacy lives on. He is remembered for how he died and the countless laughs he brought to audiences over the years. His life and career were remembered for his ability to find humor in even the simplest things, and his death on stage proves the fine line between comedy and tragedy. Tommy may be gone, but his memory brings joy to those who remember him as one of the greats of British comedy. It was October 21st, 2021. 42-year-old cinematographer Halyna Hutchins was working as the director of photography on the set of Rust, a Western film directed by Joel Souza and starring famous actor Alec Baldwin, who was also one of the film's producers. Halyna was an incredibly talented cinematographer, whose eye and visual style allowed her to work on several sets. She was regarded as someone who could handle any amount of pressure, possibly because of her childhood. Halyna was Ukrainian, and she grew up on a Soviet military base in the Arctic, where her father served with the Soviet Army. It was at the military base that she first became interested in film. She studied at the Kiev National University, and after that, she became a journalist working on documentary films. Her career in Hollywood started after she met her husband during a trip to the U.S. in 2005. Halyna then decided to move to the U.S., and the rest was history. In 2021, the couple also had a 9-year-old son. That Thursday, October 21, 2021, Halyna was at work on the set of Rust near La Cienega, New Mexico. They were going to film a shootout scene inside a church, which could be tricky. As such, actor Alec Baldwin, who was the star of the scene, decided to rehearse before the actual thing. Halyna assisted him as he practiced a gun drawing technique. First Assistant Director David Halls handed Baldwin the gun he'd use in the scene, a Pieta .45 Colt revolver. As he did so, David Halls proclaimed "cold gun," a standard saying that let the crew know the gun didn't have live rounds. There was no reason for anyone to believe otherwise. After all, the set also had an armorer, a woman named Hannah Gutierrez Reed, who handled the guns and made sure everything was in order and safe. Despite this, there had been at least 2 incidents involving the guns before, and some of the crew didn't feel entirely comfortable. Alec Baldwin clutched the revolver as he talked to Halyna Hutchins. He explained the process, showing the director of photography what he was going to do. "So I guess I'm going to take this out, pull it, and go, bang," the actor said. As soon as he said bang, a lead bullet, a real bullet, ripped through Halyna's chest before finding its home in director Joel Souza's shoulder. Halyna fell backward. Terrified, crew members gathered around her. The woman locked eyes with the boom operator and said her last words ever, "That was no good, that was no good at all." Actor Alec Baldwin shouted in shock. Halyna Hutchins was rushed to the hospital, but she was pronounced dead hours later. How could something like this happen, and who was responsible? The world of film demanded answers. Almost a month after the incident, on November 17th, the film's script supervisor filed a civil suit accusing Baldwin of playing Russian roulette by pointing a Colt .45 revolver at Hutchins. A few days later, on December 2nd, the actor spoke out publicly in an interview, saying he had no idea how a live bullet got onto the set. Baldwin's status as one of the film's producers meant some people believed him at least partially responsible for the lack of safety on set. Halyna's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit in February 2022. According to the suit, Halyna died because of reckless behavior and cost-cutting by Baldwin and others. The family announced they'd reached a settlement in their lawsuit on October 5, 2022. In November, Baldwin himself sued the film's armorer, Hannah Gutierrez Reed, as well as several other crew members for negligence. The actor himself was formally charged with involuntary manslaughter in January 2023, alongside the film's armorer. He pleaded not guilty, and the charges against him were dismissed in the spring of 2023, only to be indicted on a new involuntary manslaughter charge in January 2024. He once again pleaded not guilty. The film's armorer, Hannah Gutierrez Reed, was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 18 months in prison in March 2024. Alec Baldwin is scheduled for trial on July 9, 2024. On May 3, 1972, Leslie Cameron Harvey, a 27-year-old guitarist from Scotland, died in a tragic accident during a live performance. He was performing with his band, Stone the Crows, at the Top Rank Suite in Swansea, Wales. Leslie was known for his talent on the guitar and was a vital member of the band. Leslie was born on September 13, 1944, in Glasgow, Scotland. Music was a big part of his life from a young age, partly because his older brother Alex Harvey was also a musician. Leslie had the chance to join The Animals, a popular band then, but he decided to stay with his brother's band, the Alex Harvey Soul Band. Later, he joined another Scottish band called the Blues Council. Unfortunately, in 1965, their tour van crashed, killing 2 members of the band, and the group disbanded. In 1969, Leslie joined the band Cartoon, which allowed him to tour in the United States, opening for bands like Led Zeppelin and Spirit. He also played guitar on a solo album by Morris Gibb of the Bee Gees, though most of that album was never released. Later that year, Leslie co-founded Stone the Crows, a band quickly gaining popularity. The band was managed by Peter Grant, who also managed Led Zeppelin, and Leslie's guitar skills became a defining part of their sound. On the night of May 3rd, tragedy struck during a concert at the Top Rank Suite. While performing on stage, Leslie reached for the microphone, which was not adequately grounded. At the same time, he was holding his guitar strings, creating a fatal electrical circuit. In an instant, a surge of electricity passed through his body, and he collapsed on stage. Despite a road crew member's efforts to disconnect the guitar and an ambulance being called, Leslie was pronounced dead on arrival at the hospital. Leslie's death was a massive shock to the music community. After this incident, the music industry started to take electrical safety more seriously. Venues began to implement stricter safety measures, and equipment manufacturers made improvements to prevent such accidents from happening again. Leslie's death also profoundly impacted his family and bandmates. His older brother Alex continued his music career, but was deeply affected by the loss. Stone the Crows, the band Leslie helped create, struggled to move forward after his death. Although they continued to perform for a while, they eventually disbanded. On March 30th, 1993, Brandon Lee was filming one of his last scenes as Eric Draven, the main character of The Crow. At 28 years old, Brandon was a rising star and the heir to a huge legacy. He was the son of the legendary actor Bruce Lee. Brandon had inherited not only his father's martial arts prowess, but also his magnetic screen presence. The Crow, a dark and moody supernatural thriller, was meant to be his breakout role, the film that would launch him to stardom. But fate had a different, tragic plan. That evening, Brandon was preparing to film a scene where his character, Eric Draven, is brutally murdered by a gang of thugs. The scene was intense, demanding, and filled with raw emotion. The night before, while talking to his mother on the phone, Brandon told her he was happy about getting to film his last scene that involved weapons. He was ready for something new and was looking forward to his next project. As the cameras rolled that Tuesday, March 30th, 1993, Brandon's character, Eric Draven, walked into his apartment to find his fiancée being assaulted. In the chaos, a thug, played by Michael Massey, aimed a Smith & Wesson model 629-44 Magnum revolver at Brandon and pulled the trigger just as the scene was supposed to go. Earlier, the gun had been loaded with dummy rounds, real cartridges with the powder removed, leaving the primer intact. These rounds were designed to look real on camera without posing a danger. However, the crew had neglected a critical step, removing the primer. During a previous scene, one of these rounds was fired, and although it had no powder charge, the primer's energy was enough to lodge the bullet partway into the barrel, creating a dangerous squib load. For the fatal scene, the dummy rounds were swapped out for blanks, which are designed to produce the sound and flash of a gunshot without a projectile. But the lodged bullet was still in the barrel, unnoticed by the crew. By the time the crew started shooting, the film's armorer had already left for the day, considering that all was well. But all was not well. When Massey fired the blank round, the force propelled the lodged bullet forward, striking Brandon in the abdomen with almost the same force as a live round. The bullet sliced through Brandon. There was no blood as he fell. In fact, when the director called cut and Brandon remained on the floor, everybody assumed he was pulling a prank. Brandon was known for his sense of humor, so a prank wasn't out of the question. But he remained on the floor, unmoving. Jeff Amata, a fellow actor and friend, rushed to check on Brandon and quickly realized something was terribly wrong. Brandon Lee was unconscious and struggling to breathe. A medic was called. At first, the man shook Brandon, thinking maybe the actor had hit his head in the fall. Again, there was no visible bleeding, and Brandon's pulse was regular, at least at first. Within minutes, though, his pulse slowed dramatically. Then it stopped. The cruel reality set in, and Brandon was rushed to New Hanover Regional Medical Center. After 6 hours of surgery, Brandon Lee died in the early hours of Wednesday, March 31st, 1993. The shooting was ruled an accident due to negligence. Brandon was laid to rest next to his father at Lakeview Cemetery in Seattle, Washington. In the wake of the tragedy, Brandon's mother, Linda Lee Cadwell, filed a lawsuit against the filmmakers alleging negligence. The suit was settled out of court. The Crow was eventually released and is now considered a cult classic with a devoted fan base. It was Good Friday, April 6, 2012, in Itarare, a small São Paulo, Brazil town. The community gathered for the annual Easter play, The Passion of the Christ, a tradition that depicted the final days of Jesus. Among the actors was 27-year-old Tiago Klimek, who was playing Judas Iscariot, the disciple who betrayed Jesus and later hanged himself. Tiago was an experienced performer, having participated in the play for 3 years. He was familiar with his role and the safety equipment, which included a harness provided by the local fire department. The harness was meant to protect him during the scene where Judas takes his own life, a scene he had rehearsed multiple times. As the play progressed, the moment came for Tiago to enact Judas's voluntary death. The scene involved him jumping from a small ladder, simulating hanging from a tree. The audience watched, captivated by the performance. At first, everything appeared to be going according to plan, but then something went wrong. When Tiago jumped, the safety vest he wore under his robe shifted unexpectedly. Instead of protecting him, it tightened around his neck, cutting off his air supply. This looked like part of the performance to the audience and fellow actors. Tiago struggled to breathe for 4 agonizing minutes, but no one realized his danger. Janaina Carvalho, a fellow actor, was the first to sense something was wrong. When Tiago didn't respond to her scripted lines, she became alarmed. Realizing he was in danger, she and the other actors rushed to help. Nearby, Luis Carlos Rosner, a sandwich vendor, was approached by one of the actors. The actor urgently asked Luis for a knife to cut Tiago down. Despite initial hesitation, Luis handed over the knife, and Tiago was cut down and rushed to Santa Casa de Itapeva Hospital. Unfortunately, the situation was dire. Tiago had been deprived of oxygen for too long, causing cerebral anoxia, severe brain damage due to lack of oxygen. He was placed in a medically induced coma, but the chances for recovery were low. For 17 days, Tiago remained in the hospital, his condition critical. Despite hopes for a miracle, on April 22, 2012, doctors made the difficult decision to turn off his life support. Tiago Klimek was pronounced dead that afternoon. Tiago's death stunned everyone. What was meant to be a symbolic portrayal of betrayal turned into a real-life tragedy. The play that brought people together to reflect on Christ's sacrifice now served as a tragic example of life's unpredictability. In the aftermath, an investigation was launched to determine how this could have happened. The harness and rope were taken to the Criminal Institute of Sorocaba for examination. Police investigator Jose Victor Bassetti led the inquiry, noting that the equipment had been borrowed from the local fire department and used safely in previous years. However, something had gone wrong this time. Investigators considered whether the rope's knot was tied incorrectly, possibly contributing to the vest's malfunction. Another theory suggested that material from Tiago's costume became entangled in the harness, causing it to tighten fatally when he jumped. The investigation aimed to uncover the exact events leading to Tiago's death, but answers were slow to emerge.
It was July 18, 1989, in West Hollywood, California. Rebecca Schaeffer, a 21-year-old actress, was eagerly waiting for the delivery of a script for The Godfather Part 3. Rebecca was known for her role as Patty Russell on the TV show My Sister Sam. She was excited about this opportunity, which could be a big career break. Little did she know her life was about to turn tragic. Rebecca Schaeffer was born in Eugene, Oregon, on November 6, 1967. She was Dana and Benson Schaeffer's only child. The family was close-knit and deeply involved in their Jewish faith. Rebecca's early ambitions included becoming a rabbi, but as she grew older, her interests shifted towards modeling and acting. At 14, her hairdresser referred her to a talent agency, and she soon started appearing in catalogs and department store ads. By the time she was 16, Rebecca had moved to New York City to pursue her career full-time, balancing her education at the professional children's school with modeling and acting gigs. She landed a role in the soap opera One Life to Live, but found more success in acting than modeling, partly due to her height, shorter than the average fashion model. In 1986, Rebecca was cast in My Sister Sam, a CBS sitcom about a teenager who moves to San Francisco to live with her older sister after her parents' death. The show was a hit, and Rebecca became a familiar face on television. However, the series was cancelled after 2 seasons, and Rebecca started to pursue film roles. One of her most notable roles was in the black comedy film Scenes from the Class Struggle in Beverly Hills, which showed a different side of her acting abilities. This film, however, would indirectly lead to her tragic fate. A fan named Robert John Bardo became obsessed with Rebecca while on My Sister Sam. Bardo had a history of fixating on young actresses, and his obsession with Rebecca intensified after seeing her in this film. Bardo, born January 2, 1970, in Tucson, Arizona, had a troubled childhood. He was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and had a history of mental illness. His infatuation with Rebecca began in 1986 when he started writing her letters, to which she occasionally responded. However, his obsession turned dark after he watched Scenes from the Class Struggle in Beverly Hills and saw Rebecca in a bed scene. He became enraged, viewing her as another Hollywood starlet. Determined to meet her, Bardo hired a private investigator to obtain Rebecca's address. This was disturbingly easy at the time, as driver's license information was public record. Armed with her address and a gun purchased with the help of his brother, Bardo set out for Los Angeles. On July 18th, Bardo arrived at Rebecca's apartment building. Rebecca, expecting the script for The Godfather, Part 3, answered the door. Seeing a stranger, she was polite but firm, telling him she had an appointment and couldn't talk. Bardo left, but returned an hour later. This time, when Rebecca answered the door, Bardo pulled out a .357 Magnum handgun and shot her in the chest. Rebecca screamed, Why?" before collapsing. A neighbor heard the gunshot and called for an ambulance, but it was too late. Rebecca Schaefer was pronounced dead at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. The day after the murder, Bardo was spotted in Tucson, running through traffic and shouting that he had killed Rebecca Schaefer. He was arrested and held on a $1 million bail. During his trial, his lawyer tried to argue that Bardo had schizophrenia and was not in control of his actions. Despite these efforts, Bardo was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Rebecca Schaefer's murder had a profound impact on Hollywood and the legal system. Marcia Clark, who later became famous for prosecuting O.J. Simpson, was the lead prosecutor in Bardo's case. As a direct result of this tragedy, California passed the first anti-stalking law in the United States in 1990, making it a felony to cause someone to fear for their safety. This law became a model for similar legislation across the country. Rebecca's story was covered in various media, including a 2019 episode of the 1980s, The Deadliest Decade, titled The Copycat Killer. Her murder showed the dangers celebrities faced from obsessed fans and led to increased security measures in the entertainment industry. It was June 22, 1994, in Medellin, Colombia. Andres Escobar, a 27-year-old Colombian national soccer team defender, had just returned from the United States. Colombia had entered the World Cup with high hopes, having topped their qualifying group and defeated Argentina 5-0 in a memorable match. Even Brazilian soccer legend Pelé considered them favorites to win. However, their dreams were crushed early, and the consequences would be tragic. Born on March 13, 1967, Andres grew up in a middle-class family. He had a passion for soccer, following in the footsteps of his older brother Santiago. Andres showed promise from a young age and eventually pursued a professional career in the sport. Initially playing as a midfielder, he switched to defense under coach Carlos Pichis' Restrepo, who believed his height and skills would be better suited for that position. At 18, Andres signed with Atlético Nacional, the same team as his brother, marking the beginning of his professional football career. Though initially struggling to find his footing, he got his big break when senior player Francisco Maturana left the team due to a dispute. This opened the door for Andres to become a starter, and by the age of 20, he had secured a regular spot in the lineup. In 1988, Andres debuted for the Colombian national team in a match against Canada. His solid performances quickly earned him a spot alongside key players like René Higuita and Carlos Valderrama. Despite concerns about his youth and inexperience, Andres impressed critics and fans alike. A standout moment came when he scored a goal against England with a header, securing his status as a rising star in Colombian soccer. In 1989, Andrés scored the winning goal to lead Atlético Nacional to victory in the Copa Libertadores. However, this success came with dark undertones, as drug cartels, including those led by Pablo Escobar, were heavily involved in Colombian soccer. Despite this environment, Andrés' talent remained undeniable. After briefly playing for a Swiss club, Andrés returned to Colombia and won more titles, including the National League in 1991. A knee injury kept him out of the 1993 Copa America and the World Cup qualifying matches, but he recovered in time for the 1994 World Cup, carrying the nation's hopes on his shoulders. Colombia's World Cup campaign started poorly with a 3-1 loss to Romania. In their second match against the United States, tragedy struck. In a crucial moment, Andrés accidentally scored an own goal while trying to block a cross. This mistake and another US goal led to Colombia's elimination, despite a later victory against Switzerland. After the loss, Andrés told reporters, "Life does not end here," remaining determined to face the consequences of the game. On July 2, 1994, just days after returning to Medellin, Andrés went to a nightclub with friends. There he encountered David and Santiago Gallon, two local drug traffickers. As the night wore on, they began mocking him about their goal. Andrés tried to walk away from the confrontation, but was followed to the parking lot. When he explained that it was just a mistake, the argument escalated, and one of the men pulled out a gun, shooting him 6 times. Andrés was rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. His death shocked Colombia and the international community. The police arrested Humberto Castro Muñoz, a bodyguard for the Gallon brothers, who confessed to the murder. He was sentenced to 43 years in prison, though his sentence was later reduced. An estimated 120,000 people attended Andrés Escobar's funeral. His death became a symbol of the deep connection between soccer and the drug-fueled violence that plagued Colombia. Although efforts have been made to improve these conditions, many underlying issues remain. Years after Andrés' death, the Colombian soccer community continued to feel the weight of this tragedy. In 2018, after a red card was issued to midfielder Carlos Sanchez in a World Cup match, he received death threats. Andrés' brother Santiago spoke out, reminding the public of the ongoing issues still affecting Colombian soccer and society. It was December 8, 1980, in New York City. John Lennon, a world-famous member of the Beatles, had just finished a recording session with his wife, Yoko Ono. They were returning to their apartment at the Dakota, an iconic building on the Upper West Side. Lennon was in good spirits, recently releasing his new album, Double Fantasy. Everything seemed to be going well for him that day, but a terrible event was about to unfold. Earlier that day, Lennon briefly interacted with a fan named Mark David Chapman, a 25-year-old from Hawaii. Chapman, a former security guard, had spent hours outside the Dakota, waiting to meet Lennon. When Lennon came out, Chapman asked him to sign his copy of Double Fantasy, which Lennon did before leaving. It seemed like a typical fan encounter at the time, but Chapman had far darker intentions. Chapman had been planning to kill Lennon for months. He traveled to New York twice to prepare and familiarize himself with the Dakota building. He arrived in the city on December 6th and checked into the West Side YMCA, just a short walk from the Dakota. Over the next few days, he lingered outside, waiting for the right time. Chapman had been a huge Beatles fan, but his admiration turned to resentment over time. He saw Lennon as a hypocrite for living in luxury while preaching messages of peace and love. This feeling, combined with Chapman's desire for recognition, led him to the horrifying decision that he would end Lennon's life. On the morning of December 8th, Chapman arrived at the Dakota determined that this would be the day. He carefully organized his belongings in his hotel room as if he were preparing for a point of no return. Throughout the day, Chapman loitered near the building, carrying a copy of The Catcher in the Rye, a book he felt deeply connected to. Like the book's main character, he saw himself as a protector of moral values. That day, Chapman even had lunch at a nearby restaurant and spent time with another Beatles fan. He briefly met John and Yoko's son, Sean, and his nanny. Despite these seemingly normal moments, his disturbing plan stayed on track. As the night approached, Lennon and Ono returned home from the studio around 11 p.m. As they exited their limousine and walked toward the building, Chapman said, "Mr. Lennon." When Lennon turned around, Chapman pulled out a .38 caliber revolver and fired 5 shots. 4 bullets hit Lennon in the back and shoulder. Lennon managed to stumble into the entrance of the building, pleading for help. The Dakota's doorman, Jose Perdomo, rushed to Lennon's aid. Chapman, meanwhile, remained at the scene, casually reading his copy of The Catcher in the Rye. When Perdomo asked if he knew what he had done, Chapman simply replied, "I just shot John Lennon." Lennon was quickly taken to Roosevelt Hospital, but the damage was catastrophic. The bullets caused severe internal injuries, and Lennon was pronounced dead shortly after arriving. The world had lost one of its greatest musical icons. News of Lennon's death spread rapidly, shocking millions of fans around the world. Crowds gathered outside the Dakota and in Central Park to mourn. People sang Lennon's songs, holding candlelight vigils in his memory. His death left a deep emotional scar on music lovers and his family, including Yoko Ono and his sons, Julian and Sean. Chapman was arrested without resistance. He later confessed to the crime, explaining that he killed Lennon to make a name for himself. Over the years, Chapman has expressed regret for his actions, but he remains in prison, having been denied parole multiple times due to the lasting impact of his crime. John Lennon was only 40 years old when he died. His murder stands as a tragic example of the dangers celebrities face and the unpredictable, sometimes violent nature of fame. It was June 10, 2016, in Orlando, Florida. Christina Grimmie, a 22-year-old singer who gained fame through YouTube and her time on The Voice, had just finished performing with the band Before You Exit at the Plaza Live. Known for her love of connecting with fans, Christina stayed after the concert to sign autographs and take photos. But the night, meant to be joyful, took a tragic turn. Christina's journey to stardom began early. Born 1994 in Malton, New Jersey, she started showcasing her musical talent as a teenager. At 15, she created a YouTube channel, Zeldek's Love 64, where her covers of popular songs gained her a dedicated following. Her versions of Miley Cyrus's Party in the USA and Justin Bieber's One Time helped her build over 1 million subscribers by 2011. She released her first EP and toured with Selena Gomez that same year. In 2014, Christina competed on The Voice, delivering a powerful rendition of Miley Cyrus's Wrecking Ball during auditions. Though she finished third, her talent and warm personality earned her a growing fan base. By 2016, she had released another EP and was touring with Before You Exit, but among the fans that night was Kevin James Loibl, a 27-year-old man obsessed with Christina. Though he didn't use social media himself, Loibl spent hours watching her YouTube videos and following her online activities. His co-workers teased him about his fixation, but Loibl responded angrily, claiming he would one day marry her. His obsession led to unhealthy behavior. Loibl changed his appearance, losing weight and undergoing procedures like LASIK surgery to look more attractive, believing this would somehow win Christina's affection. Loibl's plans for that night were carefully prepared. He purchased 2 handguns, loaded magazines and a knife, concealing them in a bag. Loibl managed to enter the venue without thoroughly checking his bag. At 10:24 p.m., it was his turn to meet Christina. As she approached him with open arms, Loibl pulled out a gun and shot her 3 times. Her brother, Marcus Grimmie, tackled Loibl in a desperate attempt to stop him. In the confusion, Loibl backed away and took his own life. Witnesses described the horror of the scene. One worker, Josh Call, heard the shots and rushed inside, finding both Christina and Loibl bleeding. Christina was quickly taken to the hospital, but died from her injuries shortly after. News of Christina's death spread quickly, shocking fans and fellow artists. Adam Levine, her coach on The Voice, expressed his sorrow, calling her a beautiful soul with an amazing voice. Selena Gomez, deeply affected by the loss, posted a heartfelt message, while other artists, including Justin Bieber, dedicated performances to Christina in her honor. As police investigated, it became clear how deeply Loibl's obsession had taken root. His friend, Corey Dennington, revealed that Loibl's fixation had become alarming, even leading him to report his concerns at work, though nothing was done. Leubel had even left a note at home expressing his remorse, but his exact motive remains unclear. Some speculated that he was upset over Christina's relationship with her boyfriend, but his reasons died with him. Christina's family was devastated by her loss. A private funeral was held on June 16, 2016, and the next day, thousands attended a public memorial to pay their respects. Adam Levine generously covered the funeral expenses, which Christina's father called amazing. In the aftermath, the Christina Grimmie Foundation was established to support families affected by gun violence. Since its launch, the non-profit has helped over 100 families. Christina's legacy continued through her music, with her family releasing her final single, Invisible, in 2017, and donating proceeds to the foundation. The investigation into her death revealed failures in security at the Plaza Live, leading Christina's family to file a wrongful death lawsuit against the venue. Though the case was dismissed in 2019, it raised awareness about the need for stronger security at public events. Christina's friends, family, and fans remember her for her talent and kind heart. Through the foundation, her memory lives on, providing help to others impacted by violence and reminding the world of the importance of proper safety measures. It was March 31, 1995, in Corpus Christi, Texas. Selena Quintanilla Perez, a 23-year-old Tejano music star, was preparing for an important meeting. She was widely admired for her vibrant energy and incredible talent, making her a beloved figure in the Latin community. She performed for a record-breaking crowd at the Houston Astrodome. Yet, what should have been a regular day turned into a tragedy that shocked the world. Selena was born in Lake Jackson, Texas, on April 16, 1971. Her father, Abraham Quintanilla Jr., a former musician, helped her start singing at a young age in their family band, Selena y los Dinos. Although she initially learned to sing in Spanish phonetically, she eventually became fluent, connecting deeply with the Latino community. Over time, her powerful voice and stage presence won her many fans. The Quintanilla family band began performing at weddings and clubs across Texas, with Selena as the lead singer, her brother A.B. on bass, and her sister Suzette on drums. Abraham managed the group, and they recorded several albums under indie labels. In 1989, Selena was signed as a solo artist by EMI Records, beginning her blossoming solo career. Between 1989 and 1995, Selena released 5 studio albums and 1 live album. Her 1993 album, Live, won her a Grammy for Best Mexican American Album, making her the first female Tejano artist to win the award. She was soon crowned the Queen of Tejano Music, combining traditional Mexican styles with modern pop influences. On March 31st, Selena met with Yolanda Saldivar, her fan club president and the manager of her boutiques. Although trusted for years, Saldivar had been caught secretly taking money from Selena's businesses. Despite this betrayal, Selena agreed to meet her at a Days Inn motel in Corpus Christi to retrieve some financial records. Tension filled the motel room as Selena confronted Saldivar about the missing records. Suddenly, Saldivar pulled out a gun and shot Selena in the shoulder. Gravely injured, Selena ran toward the motel lobby, leaving a trail of blood. She collapsed at the front desk, asking for help. Saldivar followed, but was soon stopped, as motel staff called for an ambulance. Selena was rushed to Corpus Christi Memorial Hospital. Doctors tried to save her, but the damage was too severe. The bullet had caused massive internal bleeding, and despite their best efforts, Selena was pronounced dead at 1:05 p.m. She was only 23. The news of her death devastated fans around the world. Selena's funeral drew over 60,000 mourners, reflecting her wide-reaching impact. Her family, especially her father Abraham, worked to keep her memory alive. In 1998, the Selena Museum was opened in Corpus Christi, displaying her awards, stage outfits, and personal belongings. Her husband, Chris Perez, also honored her memory by writing a book in 2012 titled To Selena with Love. Selena's life and career have been commemorated in many ways. In 1997, Jennifer Lopez portrayed her in the biopic Selena, which brought her story to a wider audience. In 2020, Netflix released Selena, the series, further discussing her legacy. Her posthumous album, Dreaming of You, topped the Billboard 200 chart, making it the first predominantly Spanish-language album to reach that milestone. Selena's hit songs such as Como la Flor and Bidi Bidi Bom Bom remain beloved classics. Selena has received numerous posthumous honors, including a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 2017. Her birthday, April 16th, is celebrated as Selena Day in Texas. Fashion also played a big role in her influence, with the Smithsonian adding iconic outfits to their collection in 2022. Additionally, MAC Cosmetics released collections inspired by her style, which sold out almost instantly. Selena Quintanilla Perez achieved remarkable success in her short life, and her legacy inspires millions. Her music, spirit, and influence remain vibrant, leaving many to wonder what more she could have accomplished had she lived longer. Her legacy endures and will forever be remembered as the Queen of Tejano music.
It was September 24, 2007, and Conway Wycliffe, a New Zealand-born special effects technician, was working on the set of Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight. Conway was 41 years old and had an impressive career, having worked on big-budget hits such as Batman Begins, Children of Men, and Casino Royale. His passion for his craft had taken him across the globe to work on some of the biggest blockbusters of his time. And now he was in Chertsey, Surrey, ready to make his contribution to what would become one of the most popular films of the late 2000s. That day, Conway was leaning out of the window of a 4WD Nissan, facing backward to capture the perfect shot of the stunt car. The vehicle he was in was driven by a man named Bruce Monroe Armstrong. The plan was simple: film the Batmobile as it sped parallel to their own vehicle, capturing the intensity and the epicness of the moment. As they approached a bend, the situation took a tragic turn. The Nissan veered slightly off course, clipping a bank before colliding with a tree. The impact, though at a relatively low speed of about 19 miles per hour, was severe enough to cause catastrophic damage. Conway didn't have his seatbelt on. Even more, his head was hanging out of the open window at the moment of the impact. As a result, his head got crushed between the tree and the car. His injuries were fatal. Fellow crew member Ian Mitchell watched in horror as the Ford WD failed to turn onto the service road and instead continued into the grass, ultimately striking the tree. He rushed over to find Conway in a dire state, and calls for a medic were immediately made, echoing throughout the set. Despite their efforts, Conway was pronounced dead at the scene. Christopher Corbould, the special effects supervisor, faced scrutiny over the incident, but a court ultimately ruled Conway's death as an accident. In memory of Conway Wycliffe, the final credits of The Dark Knight read, "In memory of our friends Heath Ledger and Conway Wycliffe, a poignant reminder of the fragile line between life and art." April 2016, in a small village in West Java, Indonesia, a pop singer named Irma Bule took the stage for her final performance. She was 29, a mother of 3, and known for her daring snake dance moves. Her real name was Irmawati, but she was known to her friends and family as Eneng. Despite her modest background, Irma had gained local fame by performing with live snakes. This dangerous gimmick had earned her a spot in the competitive world of dangdut, a popular genre of Indonesian music. That night, Irma brought out one of the most dangerous animals in the world, a king cobra. Known for its lethal venom, the king cobra is the world's longest venomous snake and can grow up to 18 feet long. Irma's snake was named Rianti, and it had not been defanged, meaning its venom was fully active and deadly. As the performance began, the audience watched in awe as Irma sang and danced with the snake draped around her shoulders. She had done this often, usually with non-venomous pythons whose mouths were taped shut. But tonight was different. Rianti was not only venomous, but its mouth was also untaped, making the risk incredibly high. Irma had become accustomed to these high-risk performances because they drew larger crowds, which meant more money. In the world of dangdut, where many young women from small towns or poor backgrounds competed for attention, every edge counted. A typical gig would pay around $20, but adding a snake to the act could bump that up to $25. A small but significant difference for someone trying to support a family. As Irma moved into the second song of her set, she accidentally stepped on the snake's tail. Rianti reacted immediately, striking Irma on her thigh. The audience gasped as Irma's body jerked from the sudden bite. For a moment, she stopped dancing and sat down, clearly in pain. The offstage snake handler rushed to her aid, pulling the snake away and offering her an antidote for the venom. But Irma, determined to finish her performance, refused the antidote and continued to sing. Irma continued her performance for the next 45 minutes, her voice carrying through the night even as the venom began to spread through her bloodstream. Initially, she seemed to be holding up, but the symptoms began to show. She started vomiting and convulsing. Her body was racked with pain as the neurotoxins from the snake's venom attacked her nervous system. Despite the agony, she pressed on, but the venom was relentless. As the performance went on, Irma's condition worsened. She began to lose control of her movements, her body seizing up as the toxins shut down her nervous system. Finally, after nearly an hour, she collapsed on stage. The music stopped and the crowd watched in stunned silence as the singer lay motionless on the ground. The snake handler and other crew members rushed to her side, trying desperately to save her. They administered first aid and quickly transported her to the nearest hospital. But it was too late. By the time they arrived, the venom had done its deadly work. Irma Buell was pronounced dead shortly after arriving at the hospital, her life tragically cut short by a single deadly bite. Irma's death shocked the local community and quickly made headlines across Indonesia and beyond. Many were horrified by the circumstances of her death, particularly the fact that she had continued to perform for so long after being bitten. Irma's mother, Enkum, later revealed that her daughter might not have known the snake she was using was venomous. Enkum explained that Irma, referred to by her family nickname Eneng, was told to perform with the snake, and its mouth was not shut with duct tape. This revelation added a layer of tragedy to an already heartbreaking story. There was speculation that Irma may have used the snakes to protect herself from unwanted advances by audience members. Indonesian journalist Maid Supriyatma, who researched dangdut music, noted that female performers often face harassment during their shows. Supriyatma suggested that Irma brought snakes to prevent unwanted touching from audience members. Tragically, the snakes meant to ward off danger ultimately caused her death. It was July 23, 1982. The moon hung low over Indian Dunes, casting a ghostly glow on the sprawling landscape of Valencia, California. The location, a favorite for filmmakers throughout the 1980s, had seen its fair share of action, from the adventures of MacGyver to the drama of China Beach. But on this fateful night, it was the set of Twilight Zone the movie that transformed the quiet ranch into a scene of unspeakable tragedy. It was late at night, but the set was filled with crew members. 31-year-old John Landis, who had previously directed Animal House and An American Werewolf in London, was directing his film with his usual iron fist. It was no wonder everyone was on set. The night scene called for actor Vic Morrow to carry two young children, 7-year-old Micah Din Lei and 6-year-old Renee Shin-Yi Chen, out of a war-torn village and across a shallow river. At 53 years old, Vic Morrow was already a seasoned actor with an impressive portfolio of films. The children, however, weren't actors. In fact, they weren't even supposed to be on the set. Landis, the film's director, was violating California's child labor laws by having Micah and Ren there without the required permits, filming at such a late hour. This was also the reason why both Micah and Renee were being paid under the table. The scene was going to be a violent one. The script demanded intensity, with explosions and a hovering helicopter adding to the chaos. Vic Morrow was playing Bill Connor, a man who gets transported back in time to the Vietnam War, where he becomes a Vietnamese man desperately trying to protect two children from American soldiers. The helicopter, piloted by Vietnam War veteran Dorsey Wingo, was a key element in creating the sense of danger and urgency. And there were going to be some big explosions, despite the fact that the children's parents weren't aware of this not-so-small detail. Hovering at about 25 feet from the ground, the helicopter moved into position. Morrow, cradling the children, was supposed to heroically make his way through the river. The make-believe village behind the actors erupted into controlled flames, and Morrow started waddling through the river, carrying the two small children in his arms. It was meant to be a moment of cinematic brilliance, but instead, it became a nightmare. As Wingo maneuvered the helicopter, a large mortar effect detonated below, sending debris and a metal lid hurtling into the tail rotor. The rotor, crucial for stabilizing the aircraft, shattered upon impact. The pilot was scared out of his mind, but he was new in the business and didn't want to disrupt the shoot. He barely moved as the helicopter began to spin uncontrollably. Vic Morrow allegedly believed he was going to die in a helicopter crash. Down below, the actor had just dropped Renee. Micah was still in his arms when the out-of-control helicopter plummeted towards them. The main rotor blades struck Mauro and Micah, slicing through them. Renee was crushed by the helicopter's right landing skid. In a heartbeat, all 3 lives were extinguished. The chaos and noise of the set were replaced by an eerie silence as the reality of what had happened settled over the stunned crew. Then Renee's mother started screaming, breaking the horrible spell. A real-life tragedy was unfolding in front of them. The pilot survived miraculously. Law enforcement arrived on scene just before dawn. The aftermath was a whirlwind of investigations and courtrooms. At the trial, it was revealed that the pilot, upon seeing the explosions, had tried to steer clear, only to lose control completely. Production manager Dan Allingham had sensed the danger and called for a break, but director John Landis insisted the helicopter got lower and lower. Stephen Lydecker, another camera operator, testified about Landis's cavalier attitude towards the stunt's risks. He recounted a chilling remark made by Landis: "We may lose the helicopter." Lydecker, as well as many others, believed Landis's dismissive attitude was to blame for the tragedy. The legal battles raged for over a decade. Landis, along with 4 others, faced charges of manslaughter but were ultimately acquitted. In a 1996 interview, Landis said the tragedy, which he thought about every day, had an enormous impact on his career, from which he might possibly never recover. June 29, 2013, at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, the Cirque du Soleil show Ka was in full swing. The audience was captivated by the intricate choreography and high-flying stunts. Among the performers was Sarah Gouillard-Guillot, a 31-year-old acrobat and aerialist with over 20 years of experience. Sarah had been with the show since 2006 and was well loved by her colleagues and students. Originally from Paris, she was known for her dedication to her craft and her work teaching young performers. As the final scene of Ka began, the performers prepared for a dramatic battle on a vertical stage, a demanding sequence requiring skill and trust in their safety gear. Sarah was lifted into the air as part of the act, but something went wrong. The wire rope holding her snapped, and she fell nearly 100 feet into a pit below the stage, out of the audience's view. At first, many in the audience thought the fall was part of the act, but the sound of Sarah's screams as she fell, followed by the shocked reactions of other performers, quickly made it clear that something had gone wrong. The show was stopped, and an announcement was made that the performance was over. The audience offered refunds or vouchers for future shows. Sarah was rushed to the hospital but was pronounced dead at 11:43 p.m. Her death was the first on-stage fatality in Cirque du Soleil's 30-year history. The incident shocked the company and the broader entertainment community. In the aftermath, Cirque du Soleil's founder, Guy Lalibert, issued a statement expressing deep sorrow for Sarah's loss and noting her talent and dedication. The show Ka was immediately suspended while investigations into the incident began. The Nevada Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, investigated what had gone wrong. The investigation revealed that a combination of insufficient training and a failure in the safety equipment caused Sarah's fall. The wire rope that held her snapped during her rapid ascent because it came out of a pulley and scraped against a sharp edge, causing it to break. OSHA found several safety violations and issued multiple citations against Cirque du Soleil. These included properly training performers and appropriately protecting them during the show. The fines totaled more than $25,000. The MGM Grand, where the show took place, was also fined $7,000 for exposing its employees to hazardous conditions. The details of the investigation showed the tragic nature of Sarah's death. She was a skilled performer and a mother of 2 young children. Her loss was felt deeply by her family, colleagues, and the community who knew her. In response, Cirque du Soleil thoroughly reviewed its safety policies and procedures. They committed to improving safety measures to prevent such a tragedy from happening again. Performances of Ka resumed on July 16, 2013, with the first show dedicated to Sarah's memory. Further investigation revealed that the speed of Sarah's ascent had played a critical role in the accident. The rope failed because of the rapid movement, which caused it to rub against equipment until it broke. This pointed to the need for better training and equipment maintenance, lessons that Cirque du Soleil and others in the performing arts industry took seriously. Sarah's death also drew attention to broader safety issues in the performing arts. While her accident was the most severe in Cirque du Soleil's history, it was not the first. In 2007, 2 performers were seriously injured during a performance of Zumanity, and in 2009, an acrobat died during a training session in Montreal. These incidents underscored the risks involved in high-stakes performances and the need for constant attention to safety. Sarah was not just a performer, but also a beloved teacher. At CircFit, the fitness and circus program she helped run in Las Vegas, her students and their parents mourned her loss. Many shared tributes on social media, expressing their sadness and her impact on their lives. In the months following the accident, Cirque du Soleil faced the challenge of moving forward while acknowledging the tragedy. Known for pushing the boundaries of live performance, the company had to confront the risks that come with such innovation. The lessons from Sarah's death inform future decisions for Cirque du Soleil and the wider industry. On February 20, 2014, Sarah Jones was a camera assistant working her first day on the set of Midnight Rider, a biopic about rock musician Greg Allman. At 27 years old, Sarah was steadily breaking through in her industry. She had worked on multiple sets, such as the one of the smash hit TV series The Vampire Diaries. She was a cheerful person who never shied away from work. This would be her chance to work with some big names in the industry. But Sarah never got to finish her first day on set. That day, Sarah went to work knowing that something was a bit off. She'd spent the previous night talking to her father, a man called Richard Jones. During their phone conversation, Sarah told her father she was a bit nervous about the movie. There were several things bothering her. She was surprised to know that the movie was low budget, despite the fact that it had big names attached to it, such as actor William Hurt, who was playing Greg Allman in the biopic. Moreover, Sarah made a comment about how some of the people asking her questions were supposed to be her superiors, and as such were supposed to know more than her. She found the whole thing odd, but it wasn't enough to deter her, not with her pristine work ethic. As such, she arrived at work and carefully followed director Randall Miller's instructions. They were filming a dream sequence near a 110-year-old bridge trestle over the Altamaha River in Wayne County, Georgia. The land was untamed and full of rivers. As the day progressed, the director decided to move the shoot. The cast and crew left the land beside the river and went to the trestle itself. They were planning to shoot a dream sequence with William Hurt as Greg Allman on a heavy metal hospital bed on the railroad trestle above the river. Despite its age, the railroad was still in use, and possibly unbeknownst to a lot of crew members, CSX, the rail company, had asked the film's producers to move to another location. In other words, they were shooting the film on the trestle without the rail company's knowledge or permission. As you can imagine, things could become dangerous very quickly. Before the actual shooting of the scene began, the crew was told that in the event a train appeared, they would have 60 seconds to clear the tracks. A minute. That's what would make the difference between life and death. Hearing this, the crew became increasingly nervous. Some of them started a praying circle, but they kept working. They had a movie to shoot. Sarah Jones was everywhere that day. She helped load film, she monitored the cameras, and transported expensive equipment. The crew placed a twin-size metal-framed bed and mattress in the middle of the tracks. It was supposed to be an interesting dream sequence. Instead, it turned into a real-life nightmare. Soon after they placed the bed on the tracks, the crew heard a noise growing louder and louder. When they looked up, they saw a freight train hurtling toward them, its locomotive howling. 60 seconds. That's all the time they had to get away from the tracks. But in order to do so, they had to run in the direction the train was coming from. The director, Randall Miller, yelled at everyone to run, but Sarah Jones was diligent. She cared about her job. She stopped and hauled several bags of gear on each shoulder. She shouted, asking what to do about the camera equipment. Everybody yelled at her to drop it and run. In the meantime, other members of the crew, including the director, attempted to remove the metal bed from the tracks, fearing it could derail the approaching train and lead to a tragedy. However, their efforts were futile. The bed was too heavy, and the train was moving too quickly. When the train struck the bed and mattress with great force, it scattered debris. One piece of this debris struck Sarah Jones, who was attempting to find safety on the gangplank. The impact knocked her onto the tracks, and she was subsequently hit by the train, killing her instantly. Only her mangled body was left behind. Upon seeing Sarah's body, some members of the crew started screaming. The director cried. The crew was traumatized, but they helped collect Sarah's body until a team of paramedics arrived. Several members of the crew were also injured and needed serious medical attention. Director Randall Miller served 2 years in prison before going on probation for his part in the accident. The film's executive producer, Jay Sedrish, was initially sentenced to 10 years in prison, but his sentence was limited to probation with no jail time. Midnight Rider, the film, was never finished and released. Almost 1,000 people attended Sarah Jones's funeral. Her tragic death sparked Safety for Sarah, a campaign for increased safety in film production.